Thanks again, everyone, for joining. I am Nick Greenwood. I am Head of Marine Protection and Operational Services in the MMO, and I oversee the work of the Marine Conservation team, who are leading the work on these MPA fisheries proposals. Really appreciate everyone giving up their time to join us this evening. We've been running various in-person events over different parts of the country, and we thought we'd put this mop-up event in, or this online event for those who couldn't make those sessions. What we will be going through is the current live consultation on the MMO's Stage 3 MPA fisheries management proposals. You're probably aware, but the consultation runs until the 29th of September. So this is an opportunity for you to find out a bit more about the consultation, and both the sort of substance of the measures and also how to respond to it. And there'll also be a Q&A session. There's a Q&A function, so hopefully you can all access that. We'll try and pick up as many of the questions that get put in there as possible. Any that we can't answer, we'll get back to you. I should also say this: the presentation section is being recorded, and we'll make that available after the session's closed. In terms of housekeeping, you'll probably be aware that everyone who's joining is muted at the moment. If you want to speak, please put your hand up, your virtual hand, and a member of the team will unmute you as appropriate. But what we'll do is we'll go through the presentation, and then we're actually going to do a quick live sort of click through to the consultation pages themselves, just so everyone's really clear how they can access those. Although there are different ways to respond to the consultation, so you can use the Citizen Space pages, or you can also just send us an email to the email address, which we'll share. And yeah, but we'll go through the presentation. We will then look at the questions in the Q&A, and if there's any need to clarify anything, obviously we can bring people in as and when appropriate. In terms of other housekeeping rules, just obviously, please keep all comments respectful. We obviously might not agree on everything, but we can sort of handle that in a mature way. So hopefully we can have a constructive conversation this evening. I realise I should have clicked through to this slide, which says a lot of this information. So there we go. There's the email address on there for the conservation mailbox. We can make that available with all the stuff that goes out. So that's another way to respond to the consultation. I think that's all there. So I will move on. I'd say also, if anyone has any questions about how we're going to run this, or other kind of similar questions, do put those in the chat or in the Q&A as well, and we'll make sure we pick those up as we go along. Quick introduction before I hand over to Ella, who's going to take us through the presentation that we're providing. Just reflecting on the Stage 3 proposals, I just wanted to give a few thoughts to start off with. One really important part, and Ella will probably touch on this, is that these proposals are based on several years' worth of evidence gathering and assessment and analysis. They've come out obviously at a time where there's been a lot of public interest in bottom-towed gear and MPAs, but this is a long-standing piece of work by the team to come up with these proposals to get to this point. In terms of those assessments as well, just to say up front that the legal framework we work to is one that requires us to assess whether we can be confident that certain activities can continue without undermining the conservation objectives of the site. So it's not about proving that there is a problem, that there is damage or whatever. We've got to be confident and prove to ourselves that there won't be damage and that the sites can reach favourable environmental condition, which is what they're set up to do with activities continuing. And if we can't be confident, then we are legally required to do something about it. So that's what's led to these proposed measures. I also want to acknowledge that they're obviously not going to be popular with all of the fishing industry. So we know that these are going to be really impactful. We know that they're going to have an impact on people's livelihoods, and I understand there might be a lot of concern about that and unhappiness. And I just want to be really clear about our position with this, is that we really know that the fishing industry, the fishers out there, do a really difficult, important and sometimes dangerous job, and we take no particular pleasure in making that even more difficult. This is not about getting at the fishing industry at all. It's not about penalising any particular industry. This is about the government's ambition to have protected areas, which are protected from all activities that can cause harm, and play a really important role in reversing biodiversity loss, and hopefully supporting fisheries in the long term as well. And we can get into maybe some of that a bit later on. I'm aware that these proposals come out at potentially a bit of a difficult time. There's the EU reset deal. There's lots of concern about spatial squeeze. There's lots of offshore wind farms, being rolled out, and it's a really challenging time for the fishing industry. And as I say, we take no pleasure in adding an additional challenge to that. But the evidence that we've seen is that the impacts of certain types of fishing are not compatible with areas being in the kind of environmental condition that's required in protected areas, and that's why we're proposing these measures. If there is any way we can be confident that environmental quality can be met with fishing activities continuing, then we're absolutely keen to let those continue, and that many of these sites don't have any static gear measures, for example, because we're confident that that can take place and the sites being in good condition. So I will leave it there, I think, and I will hand over to Ella, who is going to take us through the rest of the presentation.
Thanks, Nick. So as Nick said, I'm Ella. I'm one of the Marine Protected Area Managers. I'm going to take you through the Stage 3 update. So just a bit of background, why do we have MPAs? So the seas around the UK have a diverse range of habitats and species, and protecting examples of those habitats allows the marine ecosystems to recover and increases the ecosystem services that they provide. And those services are things like food provision, nutrient cycling, carbon sequestration, and coastal protection. And these services provide increased benefits to us all. So each MPA is part of a network protecting a range of habitats and species around the UK and forms part of the government goal for healthy, safe, productive and diverse oceans and seas. So on to Stage 3. Our fisheries management work is being implemented in phases. Stage 2 assessed bottom-towed gear on reef features in 13 sites. That was completed and the bottom-towed fishing gear bylaw implemented in 2024. We're now working on Stage 3, and that assesses 43 sites, looking at the impacts of fishing with bottom-towed gear, traps and anchor nets and lines on all designated seabed features. So as part of this, we're reassessing the Stage 2 sites to address the remaining interactions that weren't previously covered, so things like traps on reef or bottom-towed gear on sand or mud. So those features, each MPA is designated due to the presence of specific features, and up on this slide is a list of all of those features that are included in the Stage 3 sites. There are some species features that are things like pink sea fan, ocean quahog and spiny lobster, but the majority are benthic or seabed habitat features. Now these habitat features, they're really important for a variety of reasons, but one of the most important is that the biological communities that they support feed into the food chain that supports commercial fish species. Some of the features act as nursery grounds for juvenile fish, others as a habitat for species that live on or within the sediments like flatfish or prey species like worms. The biological communities that are associated with these features are referred to as biotopes, so you'll see that a lot in our site assessments. The statutory nature conservation bodies, that's JNCC and Natural England, they provide advice on the biotopes which make up these features. And the features and the associated biotopes have different sensitivities to various pressures. And those pressures can be things like abrasion or smothering, and those are caused by activities that occur within the site. So these sensitivities are taken into account when we assess the impact of fishing and making our management decisions. So as Nick said, our management decisions are feature-based. They are not whole site approaches. So for example, if an MPA has both coarse sediment and sand in it, but it's only the sand that is the designated feature, MMO will only propose management over that sand feature. This will protect the feature, improve the condition of the site and align with our conservation objectives. So a little bit on our assessment process. The MPA assessments, they follow the same principles of a habitat regulations assessment or an MCZ assessment, and these are the processes that licensable activities are also put through as part of the marine licensing process. The fisheries assessment and our management proposals, they're based on 3 types of evidence: the marine species and habitats that make up the MPA features. That includes advice from SNCBs on the conservation objectives for the site. We use information on the fishing activity within the sites that can be gathered from things like VMS or landings data, and evidence on the impact that those fishing activities can have. And then we also use, the impacts of fishing on marine species and habitats, and that information is gathered as part of our impacts evidence documents, as well as advice from SNCBs. The assessments are split into 3 parts. Part A looks at what fishing activities are occurring within the site and which activities might interact with the designated features, as well as what pressures that those fishing activities might cause. Part B assesses the impact of those pressures on the features and looks at whether the activity levels observed might negatively impact the features. Part C then assesses the in-combination impacts of any fishing activities that we've determined don't need management alone in Part B. So on to a quick summary of the proposed management. So as a result of our Stage 3 MPA fisheries site assessment, we're proposing new management measures for fishing in 42 MPAs. And we're proposing that be implemented through 4 bylaws in 4 different regions of English seas: the North Sea, the Eastern Channel, Western Channel and Southwest, and the Irish Sea regions. There are multiple MPA sites included within each bylaw. So there are 14 sites in the North Sea bylaw, 7 in the Eastern Channel, 22 in the Western Channel and Southwest, and 4 in the Irish Seas. Previous bylaws, including Stage 1, will be wrapped into the new bylaws for ease of use, but will not be part of the consultation. So new fishery site assessments have been made for 12 of the 14 sites in the North Sea and 19 of the 22 in the Western Channel and Southwest. So of those 43 sites that we've assessed, new measures are proposed in 42. That includes minor changes to existing bottom tow gear prohibitions for 5 MPAs. Generally, they're just changes to the size of buffers. So we're proposing that bottom tow gear be prohibited in sensitive areas across 36 MPA sites, and that totals approximately 30,000 kilometres squared of area. Prohibitions of traps are proposed in sensitive areas across 5 MPAs, that's around 860 kilometres squared. And then the prohibitions of bottom set nets and lines are proposed in sensitive areas in 2 MPAs of around 300 kilometres squared. We're also proposing that the removal of spiny lobster be prohibited in 1 MPA, it's around 14 kilometres squared, and that's in Skerries Bank and surrounds. So moving on to the formal consultation, as you will all probably be aware, we launched on the 9th of June, and as part of that, we're seeking views on those MPA site assessments and the proposed management measures. We're also looking for views on the draft impact assessment. It's termed a de minimis assessment. So we're looking for comments on 3 topics, really. So any additional evidence on the features or fishing activity, and then comments on the proposed management options. So your opinions on them, the impacts they might have, or suggestions of relevant alternatives. In terms of your responses, providing reasoning behind your opinions is really useful, as well as adding any evidence possible. That really adds weight during the consideration. Both scientific evidence and evidence from personal experience is really useful, and we really do value that when considering responses. And we're going to use all of this information received during the formal consultation alongside other information, sort of updates to our data and other analysis of academic literature to update and finalise the assessments and our management measures for these sites. So as Nick mentioned, you can respond via our online survey, which we've linked here, but we'll also send out links for. And all of the documents that we speak about, all of the documents that are relevant, they're provided on that survey. You can also respond via email, telephone, or in writing. So that's about it for me, and I'm going to hand over to Viv for a walkthrough of the gov.uk page.
Thank you, Ella. I'll just share my screen. Will come up. Brilliant. Okay, good evening, everyone. So my name's Viv Roberts, and I'm also an MPA Conservation Manager. And I'm just going to give you a quick stop run through the landing page for our MPA Stage 3 consultation page. So if I go down slowly, you can see there's a content section, which can link to all of the relevant documents. Then there's a bit of an overview section where you can find a link to some background information for the importance of MPAs, a link here to our consultation documents, a bit of an overview of some of the proposed management measures that are delivered across all 4 of the bylaws. There's also a section that links to each of the 4 regional bylaws, and I'll just click in one to give you a bit of an example. So this is the North Sea bylaw. And if you go down to the first site within this bylaw, this is for the Dogger Bank site, and you can see there's all the coordinates there which you're able to plot on your plotters, and then underneath there'll also be a map of the area, bylaw area as well, and there's a key at the bottom of that map. And that will be the same for each of the sites within the bylaws. Okay, there's also a link here to our social and economic assessment, so the de minimis assessment. A link to all of our site assessments. And at the end of the page, there's also all of these links are compiled under the important documents section. So you have a link to the consultation document, site assessments, and in this one, there's also a methodology document that sits alongside each of the site assessments and explains in more detail some of the approaches we've taken in our assessments. There's also a link here to 3 impacts evidence documents for each of the gear types. So as you can see, there's one for anchored nets and lines, one for bottom tow gear, and one for traps. And these documents are a collation of all the evidence that we've compiled for the impact of the gear on the particular features of an MPA. And then in this link, you can get to some interactive web apps, and they will help you see visually some of the fisheries data. So I'll just quickly go in. There's a guidance note on how to use the web app, and then individual links to each of the separate web apps for what you're interested in. So there's a web app that gives an overview, each of the gear types, designated features, BMS density, wind farms relevant to each site, and also current management shapefiles, ArcGIS shapefiles that'd be. And I'll just try and get back to where we started then on the landing page. At the bottom of this page, you'll also see instructions for how to respond. Some of the questions are listed here again on the type of views that we're seeking your input on and the kind of evidence that you can contribute. And then right at the bottom, you can click this link, which will take you to the consultation survey page. Again, this page has some more information, but at the bottom of this page, you'll see the link to the online survey, which you can click on to start your survey response. Now, just to mention that the survey, you can choose to skip certain questions and focus on the site-specific site-specific boxes if you're only interested in certain sites, so you don't have to complete all of the survey if you only want to comment on one particular site. And you can also save your response as you go and come back to it later if you don't want to complete it all in one go. And that's all I have, so I'll hand back over to Nick.